welcome to the Eindhoven Innovation Café. Thanks for coming. Thanks for everybody watching online as well. For those of you who haven't been here before, we are a weekly networking event where we offer presentations on the subjects of technology and design. And tonight we have Dr. Lenneke Kuijer here, who will speak about ways to create summer comfort in the more increasingly hotter summers. We'll start with a presentation first and have the opportunity for drinks later. And we'll provide a few snacks as well. And we also offer a meal for all of the Innovation Cafe visitors afterwards. But I'll tell you a little bit more about that. First, enjoy the presentation.
Okay, thank you. I'll set the timer and I hope I will keep within the time. I think I will be able to. But please, if something is really unclear, feel free to ask a question in between. Yes, I'm Lenneke Kuijer. I'm an assistant professor in the Industrial Design Department of the TU Eindhoven, the Future Everyday Group. And my research is sort of situated between design research and social science. So I use theories from social science, I will say more about that, and I try to integrate them into design. And so while this talk is mainly about alternative futures of summer comfort, it also has a more general message or a discussion topic or reflection on this topic of the techno-hedonist persona, which can have a meaning not just for this particular topic of summer comfort, but beyond that for design. So it would be really nice to have some discussion about that at the end. Okay. So first I want to say a little bit about the project within which this research on summer comfort was conducted. So in 2019 I was awarded a NWO, so a Dutch Research Council Venny grant. And this is a prestigious personal grant that gives me, yeah, thanks. It was the first in my department, so I was really happy to get it. And it's really been very rewarding to have this majority of my time to spend on this research project. And the aim of the project is focused on developing new design methods that help designers to better anticipate the role of smart or interactive technologies in the dynamics of everyday life. And why is this? I've been working with social scientists quite a lot during my time as a PhD and a postdoc. And every time I was really interested in research that they did about the impact of technology on everyday life. And that can be really, the secondary and longer term effects of technology can be really broad and complex. So for example, the introduction of central heating in homes has made heating much more efficient, but it has also strongly increased the amount of heat that people use in their home, the expectations they have of how a home should be heated. Welcome. Please take a seat. And also, well, we know the mobile phone, of course, which has had many different impacts, among others, on how we communicate with each other, how we make appointments, how we find information, etc., etc., etc. But what is really frustrating about this research is that it's always in hindsight that these social scientists tell us designers, you did it wrong. This has had so many negative effects. It has destroyed this communication. It has led to this increase in energy demand. And so my mission has been to take these theories and methods, insights from the social sciences, but to translate them into future-oriented methods for design. And to do this, I chose the topic of summer comfort for my project because summer comfort is something that is currently changing strongly and that we also expect to become more problematic in the future. So how can we already anticipate that as designers in the present? Okay, so yes, as we know, so summer comfort is changing due to climate change. And it is already showing up in the energy use of households. And this is really ironic, actually, because we have global warming. This increases the use of artificial space cooling, which actually contributes to greenhouse gas emissions and to global warming. So it's a really ironic cycle. So how to do something about this, how to break it. That's the focus of the project and of today's talk. And I work with a number of partners, which is a diverse set of partners that all have something in some way to do with summer comfort. And they're really closely involved. So I see them at least twice a year, but also throughout, in between I'm in close contact with them. So it's really nice to have their diverse input on the project as well. So I'm not doing it all alone. So the project consists of 3 main phases. This is inspired by future studies. Slava knows much more about that than me, I guess. But the first phase of the project was focused on possible futures, which looked at, okay, what is currently happening. The second phase, and this is the main topic of today's presentation, is about possible futures, really trying to open up this space of where could we go. And the current phase, the phase that I'm currently in and that I cannot really present many results of yet, but I will give a little bit of a glimpse today, is focusing on a more practical, really design phase of trying to, okay, think about how can we make this alternative future practical. But today I will talk mostly about the possible future phase that try to open up this space of alternative futures. So to give a bit of background to that phase, it's important to say a little bit about the first research that I did. And so both these earlier phases are now published in publicly available stakeholder reports. So you can just find them online quite easily when you look for my name or the title. So in this first research, the question was really, what are households currently doing with regards to hot weather, and what are their expectations? Where are they heading? And so I interviewed 21 households with in-depth interviews, and they were highly diverse households spread all over the Netherlands, different types of households, different types of homes, etc. And I had 10 expert interviews to offer also a different perspective on the future developments, because households aren't the experts on this. So the main conclusions of this research was that first, people deal with heat in a diversity of ways. Creative and highly diverse. But it's also clear that artificial cooling and then mainly air conditioning is spreading rapidly in the Netherlands. So currently more than 20% of households already have cooling, and another 26%, that was a couple of years ago, is considering to get it. So it's growing really fast. And this is concerning, not just because artificial cooling requires quite a lot of energy. Research also shows that people tended to set the temperature of this cooling system fairly low. So TNO has found this to be about 20 degrees, which can be a really big difference between the indoor and the outdoor temperature, which also, as the study indicates, and also common sense, has an effect of locking people indoors. So when the temperature difference becomes so high, people get hesitant to go outside. It feels like a wall you walk into. And what they then also tend to do is take their car instead of going by bike where they want to go, because it's too hot and the car already has the air conditioning. They also tend to shower more because they feel dirty from sweating. And what is also concerning from this research, so one is here in between, is that our access to cooling is unequally divided. So especially people with lower incomes and people in rented houses have much more difficulty to get access to cooling than other households. But what I want to focus on most, I guess, is how cooling hampers other less resource intensive and more accessible strategies to deal with heat to develop. So shading, ventilating, and acclimatizing, which is a bodily adjustment to heat, are all hampered by the presence of cooling. And in my research, I argue that this hampering effect of cooling is in part, or importantly, caused by the way these systems, the cooling systems, are designed. And this, again, is informed by the images of end users and the images of future summer comfort that exist within the companies and industry that design these systems. So this system, this image and the central figure within this image has been described by Dahlgren et al. As the techno-hedonist persona. So I've been to many trade fairs of the HVAC industry. HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And very dominant in this industry is this idea of a person who just wants easy comfort and who wants to have the same indoor climate within a fairly narrow range all year round. And that is how these systems are designed. But this, as argued just before, leads to downsides. So there's lock-in, it's energy intensive, it's inaccessible, and it pushes out other alternative forms of keeping comfortable in hot weather. And what I also found in this research that I did among these 21 households is that actually this techno-hedonist persona wasn't so dominant in the fieldwork. So it's dominant in the HVAC industry, but it's not dominant in everyday life, it seems. So this made me think about, I wanted to say this. So what you see is that this dominant future vision, in which the techno-hedonist persona is central, is leading to a couple of design paradigms in the industry. And these paradigms, they result in this lock-in effect of cooling. So this is focused on automation, on stability, and on technology offering this stable, automated indoor climate that you don't have to think about once you have pushed the button or set the settings. And so, because this is so undesirable for how the future of summer comfort might develop in the Netherlands, I thought, what if we flip this techno-hedonist persona around? What if we imagine a different kind of user who is willing and able to invest time and effort, to learn new skills, and to change their expectations of comfort and normal living within a changing climate? And that was the assignment that I gave to my students. So I had different courses in which students worked on this assignment, and I also worked with the partners in the project to think about this challenge. And what I also found, and I won't go much deeper into that here, is that to design for this different kind of persona, you actually need different kinds of design methods. Because a lot of design methods are focused on making things easy and user-friendly, etc. But more about these design methods is described in a report. If you want to know more, we can also talk more about it in the discussion. But I wanted to go deeper into the results of the project. So I had different student projects and different projects with the core consortium that resulted in 16 design fictions. And I will not present all 16, but I've selected 3 that I will go a little bit deeper into for you. And that's not exactly this 3, but I don't know, it's just a collection. So the first one I want to talk about is urban camping. And so urban camping is a fictive concept of a high-end kit that enables young people to set up their workspaces outdoors. And on hot days, city apartments easily overheat, so that's what it started from. And to escape the heat and prevent their appliances from heating up their spaces further, the young workers revert to the ample shaded green space of future cities, and they enjoy working on their laptops in a gentle breeze. So what this concept does is to engage with the inequalities of access to heat. The students also talk to people with experience of homelessness. So they really thought about what kind of role could the public space play. They also made a working prototype of the high-end kit. And what they did was take this prototype and to perform urban camping. And this is one of the methods that I actually tested out. So what they did was they were 3 students, and they performed. They made a personal performance for themselves of acting out urban camping, while one of them acted as an ethnographer who was studying experienced urban campers. And through that, so by performing it as if it was already a practice, they really learned a lot about how public space is or isn't welcoming to being used for just being there. I mean, it's really a space to go through a parking lot is really a space for cars to spend their time and not people. And so through that performance, they learned a lot. And from this, they also created a fictive future newspaper article that I can that you can have a look at if you like. So this really brought the future in which this way of dealing with heat was normal to life. Another one that dealt actually with the assignment quite differently is cooling patch. So cooling patch is is set within a fictive scenario where it is provided for free by the government, and the cooling patch contains microneedles that painlessly release the patented Keep Cool technology into the body. And Keep Cool makes the composition of the blood better resistant to heat and cools the body from the inside. So it is provided for free, but it also has some side effects. And what's interesting about this fictive concept, of course, is that it's not adhering to the assignment per se, because it's like an ultimate technical solution to dealing with heat. But by being such an extreme solution, it also challenges this idea of how far do we want to go with solving this with technology. And that generated a lot of really interesting discussions and reactions. It also illustrates or maybe highlights that actually the body is already capable physiologically to adjust to heat. So we don't even we have this magic technology actually inside our bodies, and this is called acclimatizing. So when you are sufficiently exposed to heat, so not staying in cooled environments all the time, your body adjusts to heat, and your sweating capacity becomes higher and your heart rate goes down because your blood volume increases. So there's physiological changes happening in reaction to heat exposure. And also this prototype was made into, this idea was made into an actual prototype, so if you are careful you can even see the product inside. And it was really funny that at some point I was presenting this at the Dutch Design Week, and there was a technical person who asked if this really worked. And I said, no, it's a fictive concept to illustrate this idea. And then he sort of walked away angry. Like, was really frustrated that this was not a real product. But I thought that really nicely illustrates how what expectations are of technology and how technology is going to save us. Well, I don't think it will. And then with living shirts, we went a little bit further in creating a fictive scenario around it. So living shirt is a garment that contains air plants, and that actually exists, air plants. And it's part of a fictive line of professional dress representing a future where sweating as a response to hot weather is welcomed as a way to cool down, but the sweat also feeds the plants. And in return, the plants, because they evaporate humidity, they also help you keep cool and shade your body. And so it's a relatively extreme concept, because it's a totally different way of living. It's a totally different relation that you have with your clothing, with plants, and with your body. But that is, again, to illustrate and try to experiment with what it would mean to have a different kind of user that you assume. Yeah?
Makes this clothing you shower only once a week? Or, because I think nowadays most people shower like every 2 days.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, so that's part of the concept, is to challenge this idea of, do we shower that often, or can we shower less often? Because in hot weather people tend to shower more often, but yeah, what if you would shower once a week? Because, well, it's a discussion. It's a provocation, that's the thing. Yeah, that's what it's meant for. Yes, and this, again, this shirt was made into a working prototype. I didn't bring it because the plants, well, they don't like it when they travel so much. So, but in the Dutch Design Week, it was people were able to interact with it, and so we'd see it close by. Yes, so of course, these fictions create a lot of discussion. They created reflections, but did they do more? I mean, after that, you also want to think about what can be more realistic kinds of solutions. So I would say that they did two main things next to the being provocative and creating discussion. So on the one hand, they gave flesh and bones to alternative kinds of end users that helped really in the consortium to open up this space. And thereby, they also opened up an alternative space for futures of summer comfort. And do I have some more? Yes, I have some more slides on explaining how this worked really in the project. So, yeah, like I said, the dominant future vision of summer comfort was based on automation, stability, and technology. But these design fictions helped to give shape to the alternative future vision of summer comfort. So they help to question, also through other literature and work that is ongoing, the focus on automation and ease of use. Because if you focus on automation, then you always have to have a lot of assumptions. Assumptions about maybe personal preferences, assumptions about levels of activity, about levels of clothing. And all these assumptions together, they can focus on the mainstream and capture most of the people maybe that are affected by this technology. But if you take all these assumptions together, then actually the area that you capture with your assumptions becomes quite narrow. So what happens is that if you have automation, then you have a risk of a mismatch between your assumptions and the situated circumstances, which can lead to frustrations, but also to waste of energy. So for example, the heating is still on or the cooling is still on when nobody is there, or you're actually cold when the cooling is on and somebody puts on a sweater. Another problem with automation is that when you delegate all the responsibility for keeping the house comfortable to technology, you actually don't use the whole potential of human capabilities who are also there and who have other capabilities than the technology. And what this leads to, or also has as a consequence, is that there is a shifting power balance. So if things are automated, if tasks and responsibilities are delegated to technology, then eventually HVAC Inc. Decides and knows everything about what happens around comfort in your house, and actually people who live there become less and less capable of making changes, and they become dependent and powerless around this technology. So the concepts and the design fiction exercise really help to highlight this importance of collaboration. When you have collaboration between humans and computers, there is a possibility of adjustment to local and situated circumstances. It's possible to include unique human capabilities. There is a mutual exchange of information instead of an information imbalance, and therefore a rebalancing of power. And of course, human-computer collaboration is not new. It's not emerging from this project, but what is true is that through the project, this idea of including human capabilities is enlarged and sort of opens up for this area of HVAC designers and developers. Because before you could say there is a need for human-computer collaboration, but there was no way of thinking about that, or how would that work. And so the design fictions really help to fill this out, to flesh it out. And this also opened up another area which is much closer related to energy demand. So as I said, within the HVAC industry, this idea of a stable indoor climate is really strong and really dominant, and it's designed into HVAC systems. And if you look at this figure, then you see that, so in winter, when temperatures are low, the heating is on, and in summer, when temperatures are higher, the cooling is on. And this is a very rough generalization because it's much more complex than that. But let's say, okay, but if you have a change, if you would have a wider comfort zone and a moving of the temperature along with the seasons, then you would need significantly less heating and cooling in the house. But if you want to do this, because this adaptive model, the idea of the adaptive model has been around for a long time, but it's never been implemented in these HVAC systems. And so that is also where these design fictions and the fleshing out of this different kind of persona really helped to give this hands and feet, so to say. So this is a little bit a complicated figure. I sometimes get confused by it as well. But the point I want to make with it, can I use? Yeah, no, it doesn't work. Is that, let's say this is summer and the cooling is on only at 27. So it doesn't go on when it's lower. Then this person will be fine. They are fine at 27 degrees. This person is a little bit hot. They don't really like, and maybe they're also not feeling so well, or they have to work in their suits. And this person is super hot. So these two types of people will have to do something to adjust. But we have just thought about a lot of ways in which people can adjust, and we are assuming that they are willing and able to do this. So, this one. So here we have all these different kinds of adjustments that we have now included in our design system. And the same counts for heating. So in winter, some people will be fine at 17 and others will be a bit chilly, and they can have all these other ways of keeping warm or keeping themselves comfortable. And then when we look at the other model again, we suddenly see that actually this is already happening, but it's the other way around, and in ways that actually waste a lot of energy. So again, when a house is cooled to 20 or 22 degrees, somebody will be cold, and they will maybe turn on a sweater or, I don't know, open the window, and the same in the winter. When a house is heated to 20 or 22 degrees, some people will be too warm and they will open a window or take off their sweater. Again, people need to adjust, but energy-wise, this is much more intensive than the other way, the other model. And also, these adjustments are not acknowledged by the HVAC industry. Okay, then if you look at collaboration and flexibility together, you also sort of imply that you look at ecology, in the sense that you assume that you are working with the weather rather than against it, that you are working with the plants and greenery around you, and that you are working with your body rather than against it. So these three shifts are then supported and emerge from the design fiction exercise. And this is where we are at the moment. So I'm working with this design agency in Amsterdam to design an interface, had to make it practical, that works with these design principles and the knowledge that we have collected so far in the project, to design an interface that supports people to keep themselves comfortable in a diversity of ways during hot weather. So to go back to the ironic cycle, I guess that I situate the techno-hedonist persona there between global warming and how you deal with it. And a lot of technological solutions are more focused on the arrow below to think about how can you make cooling in a more energy efficient way. So this is really a different approach to thinking about cooling and its environmental impacts, trying to move away from this cycle, so to say. Yeah. And another general thought that maybe also helps to translate this research to other areas of technology development is this idea of cuckoo. So cuckoo is a bird that lays its eggs in the nest of the reed warbler. Actually, don't know exactly the Dutch name for that. And then the cuckoo chick hatches earlier than the reed warbler's eggs and pushes out these eggs before they can hatch. And then the reed warbler raises the cuckoo chick. And how I see this analogy is that cooling technology comes into our homes. It automatically solves the problem of heating, and thereby also pushing out the seeds or the eggs for other strategies of dealing with heat to develop. So Dutch people aren't very used to dealing with heat. We don't know exactly how to ventilate properly, how to shade our houses, what the effects are of acclimatizing. And for example, strategies that are accessible to everyone, like heat rest, for example, or more accessible and inexpensive, they probably have less of a chance of developing in a society where cooling is commonly used. And this was my last slide, so thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah. Oh.
I have two questions. I would like to know your definition of technology, because the projects you presented are for me just alternative, albeit fictitious technologies. And actually they all aim at cooling.
I'm sorry.
It's for me the same. You just like cool differently.
Yeah. What is technology? So your question is, what is technology and how a technology is different?
Technology.
Yeah. I also, that's a really good question, because my point is not that cooling is wrong.
Yeah.
I would say that the problem is in the vision of what it's for and who it's for, and that's what I'm aiming to change. So then, I think the call is for designers to reflect on what kind of end user do we imagine when we design something, and I focus, so to say a little bit more about technology, I focus in my research on interactive technologies with sensors and actuators and power, and that are used in everyday life. So not fusion or atomic fusion or medical technologies. But what is interesting about these technologies for me is that they take over certain tasks and responsibilities from people. And from a sociological perspective, that is really interesting, because that changes everyday life.
The plants do the same. The plants of the shirt take away from me the task, like the air.
Yeah. But they don't really take a decision. So it's also, again, I don't think the making of the decision by the technology or the delegating of the decisions to technology is wrong. It depends on which types of decisions are delegated to technologies.
But you're not delegating that to technology. You put the air conditioner, you put it in a certain temperature. So you can say, okay, I don't want it in 22, I want it to 26.
Yeah.
And then, so it's our decision, not the technology.
Well, that is different with a thermostatic heating or cooling system, because if you set it to 22 or 26 or whatever, then the thermostat is there, so that's with the sensors and actuators to keep an eye on the temperature all the time, and then automatically decide when is the cooling switched on and when it's switched off. Yeah. So then, without noticing, the temperature in your house is kept at a certain temperature by the technology. So. Yeah. But also, if you compare it to, for example, well, in heating it's easier. If you compare it to heating with coal or heat stove, then already in heating systems, a lot of the work of keeping the house warm has been delegated to the infrastructure of gas, for example. So we don't need to think about heating our home or having the fuel to heat our home anymore, because that's now been delegated to the gas infrastructure.
Sorry, but you go ahead. Actually, another question.
You haven't, I studied architecture, and there was like a passive way of cooling a house, like the Canadian, having like a tube under the ground and having the temperature changing and then going. So all those, there's a lot of things.
Vernacular architecture. Yeah.
And watching to the old things, like in places where it's really warm, like the houses are like more one with others, so you have narrow streets, like those kind of things are passive, and it's, well, I think I consider the technology, but it's a passive technology.
Yeah, no, I think those are really great methods of keeping a house cool. And they work much more with the weather. So for example, a tree next to your house is also a really great technology to have a less hot house. Yeah.
Okay.
Why the focus on cooling? So summer comfort is not only temperature or removal of heat.
No. So I do call it summer comfort because it's broader than that. It's also about humidity, but it's also about your emotional state. And I think that actually people are much more capable of judging whether they are comfortable in that broader sense than automated cooling systems are. So that's also a reason to say we shouldn't have these cooling systems solve heat for us in the background, because keeping comfortable is actually so much more than having a temperature between 18 and 22 degrees in your house. Yeah, definitely.
And my last question, so this triggered me actually a lot. So some of these concepts are indeed very fictitious, and based on what you explained here, I would even say I can't follow how this could even work. There's some contradictions in there.
Mm-hmm.
What is the value of, for you, of exploring such fictitious concepts?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a really good question. I mean, that's what I've been thinking about when we did. Design fiction is a commonly used method in design, and it's often used to generate reflection or debate on something. So they're not meant to work. It's actually on purpose that they are contradictory in themselves, because that triggers discussion and reflection about a topic. But I wanted to see if they can do more than that. And for me, what they do is they help to give a body to this other persona, to this person that is opposite to the techno-hedonist, to this person that is willing to sit outside in a square in hot weather and work there. This person is not, I mean, they probably exist, people who are willing. It's not maybe a mainstream person, but I also think that this techno-hedonist person doesn't really exist. But they are really dominant in directing design decisions in the HVAC industry. And I think that in part, actually, these are self-fulfilling prophecies. So if the HVAC industry makes technologies that assume this kind of person, then people get used to that kind of technology and that kind of living. So the imaginaries of these personas also are instrumental in making them, in creating these personas. So that is also an idea behind creating an alternative persona, is that it might also work, hopefully, to create that kind of person when you start designing for them. That person. So, there's too many hands. So there was someone in the back first, and then you?
Yeah. Going on that, on the self-fulfilling prophecy, and also the HVAC ink.
Yeah.
Because I really like the ideas to open up the debate. I wasn't clear about the HVAC industry is already moving, shifting a little bit towards or away from the techno-hedonistic persona. Because otherwise, how do you, because the HVAC industry has this huge marketing probably budget and stuff like that, so, and you mentioned it, it's kind of self-fulfilling prophecy, so how do you break open these, because you want to debate and I think the companies just want to sell more air conditionings and stuff like that because they have to make profit, stockholders.
Yeah.
So how do you fight or cooperate? Fighting is maybe a little bit strong.
Yeah.
What's your plan to fight?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good question. I'm really glad you asked it. Yeah, because there's several ways. So one of them is bringing this discussion out into the open and saying that, like, summing up the effects of dependence on air conditioning. Because yes, dependence on air conditioning is really good for the HVAC industry. That's how they sell their stuff. And when people become dependent, well, they keep on buying your stuff. So yeah, of course. So, but I work closely with one company that makes heat pumps and ventilation systems, And I really see that they are becoming enthusiastic about these ideas. And also because I'm not saying that they shouldn't sell their stuff, I'm just saying that they should maybe design their displays in a bit of a different way. And the arguments that I'm building up in the project, for example, about autonomy, about adjustment to situated circumstances, they really ring true with them because they also get frustrated with this really rigid model, and they also see this effect that I showed, that it's not serving everybody. This.
Yeah.
So this really, they understand this. And how am I trying? So there is a yearly big trade fair for the HVAC industry in February. So I'm currently designing this alternative interface with the design agency that really shows how it might be done as a kind of concept car idea. And we are going to present it at the trade fair for the HVAC industry. So hopefully that will reach them.
For
Yeah.
is it a small company you're working with or a big?
Ito Dadrop, they are
Medium.
yeah, they are big in heat pumps,
Yeah.
but not in air conditioning. So I was also in contact with the NVKL, the Dutch Society for Cooling.
Yeah.
And they were also interested in thinking about, for example, how do they train their installation experts with a different paradigm. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
I have a question also, and then I just wanted to ask a bit of the thing is you were showing a couple of pictures where like we have this HVAC industry, and then where people are like in a close confinement, and then you have asked the actual people who are have done interviews, and then you say like there is quite a difference. And now my question is like, are there any similarities between these two groups? We know that there exist differences, but are there any similarities that you have observed that is actually driving the underlying techno-hedonist?
Yeah.
Yeah, they drive for techno-hedonism. And the reason why I'm asking this is because I come from a very warm country.
Yeah.
And I have been used to like living in hot climates, and the way the buildings are built there are completely different from the way it is here.
Yeah.
For example, like when I look at these Dutch apartments, we have apartments in India as well, come from India. So yeah, the thing is when I look at these apartments, they are quite well ventilated, not just the house, the apartment block itself, but then the hallway between the apartment. So the air is going in, there is a draft, and then if somebody opens their house, then they can also let all this hot air in their house join the draft. It's almost like small streams joining the big river,
Yeah.
and then this way the house is getting cooled.
Yeah.
And this is not something that I observe here with Dutch apartments because it's fully blocked, and even if somebody opens their window, there is no ventilation happening.
Yeah.
And when I was asking myself, so what are the similarities? One of the similarities I note myself is like there is a level of isolation in that sense, like in this techno-hedonist picture that I was seeing, people are isolated from the outside environment, confined to a space.
Yeah.
And I also note the same thing with with the actual people living in the space itself, because they are also quite isolated with their apartment block, and that's why this techno-hedonism where like localized cooling for the space is coming in.
Yeah.
In that sense, if the space itself would open up, then there is no need for like this.
Yeah.
And this is a similarity that I've observed, and now I want to ask you, are there any other similarities?
With the techno-hedonist persona, yeah, I mean, this vision has a really strong attraction, so I see that. There are several things in your story that trigger me because, or that inspire me because, yes, the Netherlands is not used to heat, so that is in the people, but also in the buildings. They are not designed to deal with heat. But there are so many things that people can do to cool their houses down through ventilation, for example, or to keep heat out with shading, to change their schedule maybe. So, and a lot of these strategies are currently not used or underused. because people need to learn new skills to deal with it.
Yeah.
But when they buy an air conditioning, which is the easiest way to deal with hot heat in your house, and a lot of people are doing it, then these other strategies become obsolete. You don't notice anymore that it's hot, or even shading is really expensive, but you have just bought an air conditioning, why should you buy shading? Or ventilating is actually quite complicated. You really have to look at the outdoor temperature and the indoor, and when you have your aircon on, then you shouldn't open your windows because it's actually cooler inside.
Yes, for sure. Like this is where like my point was also like coming in that sense. Like there is this tendency for like isolation, like confining like this personal space to oneself, not to the anywhere like besides the person itself.
Yeah.
And because of this confinement, I mean, I see something like this. And they think, while you were also presenting, I came up with an idea where like, well, I can just open my house. I want to keep it confined. I can just put a curtain to my door, and then the house is still ventilated. Nobody is looking into my house.
Yeah.
And in that way, like the house itself is getting cooler. And I never had this feeling that I was being invaded by my neighbors while I was living in this apartment myself before I came here.
Yeah.
So in that sense, curtains are always closed, but then there is always an air trap that is cooling the house.
Yeah. No, I think those, and one of the concepts in the book is also collective sleeping. So this is a concept where there is a cooled, bigger space where people come together to sleep at night and don't stay in their own homes, but you really have this shared cooled space that you use. Yeah. Thank you.
I want to make
There was also a question here. Sorry, because this gentleman also had a question before.
Part of it was already asked by Steven, by the other guy. What I think is putting onto that is that at least partners like that, they want to create people that are very dependent. You can see that in a different field, like I am amazed at how many people use electric bikes nowadays. I see children from 9, 10 years on the electric bikes. When I went to school, I had to go 10 kilometers back and forth in winter, in rain, and it didn't bother me at all. And now you see kids. They will not even learn how to use their muscles, and you can see it in some of the people. You can see that develop already. That you see it in their posture. They sit on these things like sacks. But the bike industry is thriving on it, and I think it would be a wise battle to see how you will not maybe fight them, but make people see that they don't need that stuff, and it's actually better to bike without. There will be people that need it or that can use it.
Same for cooling.
There will be a lot of people who could use the calorie burn of just taking the bike and bicycle and not have an electric enhancement to their body like that. And I think the industry is pushing really hard like this. I mean, I see them pop out all over the houses now in my neighborhood too. Because it's easy.
Exactly.
I think it's a generation that doesn't want to have things hard, the hard way. It's a generation that doesn't want to have any trouble at all. And that's the easiest part.
Yes, but I think I agree. I mean, it's a really tough battle, so to say. But I try to, because now you are again confirming that that is what people want. And I think that narrative, I totally understand it.
Not
but
what people want, but what the technology
it's
industry
pushing for.
Makes people believe that they want.
I'm not sure, so I want to challenge that for a moment. So I completely agree, buildings are not suitable in the Netherlands for warm weather, and in my opinion, they are in general of very low quality. Also in the winter it's a problem. But I believe the majority of people who retrofit HVAC or air conditioning systems, they don't do this because they have a desire to do this. Air conditioning has, I think, a very negative connotation with many people.
Yeah.
They associate it with a draft, and also they are fully aware of the high costs. So I challenge a bit this desire to have an air conditioning system, and that it's the HVAC industry's fault. It's the bad architecture, and maybe people not knowing how to modify their houses. And I would hypothesize that most people don't like to have an HVAC system.
Well, if you look at the sales figures, then that's not the case.
No. It's not that they buy this out of, it's for them an emergency kind of, okay, they can't deal with the heat. Yeah?
The architecture
they have no
is...
other way to deal with this, and they are not happy, I think, to buy HVAC systems.
If you look at simulation studies on the effects of shading and ventilating and doing that effectively, it can make a difference of 9 degrees Celsius in a house. So I think even in of course I agree, but we cannot just change all the houses in the Netherlands. We have to work with this housing stock. But HVAC is the easiest, but it's definitely not the only way of keeping the house livable in hot weather. Yeah. Okay, I guess those were the 2 questions. Yeah, thank you so much. That was great.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation and for answering all of our questions. I hope we can get to see more of these personas in real, and it was really inspiring to hear about them and the possibilities. The conversation also really got going. I suggest we continue that at the bar for drinks. Feel free to get one. We'll provide a few snacks. We also offer a dinner at the meetup table for all of our Innovation Cafe guests. I'm not sure yet what it is today, but I will check and I'll ask you later on if anyone of you is interested. For now, just enjoy the rest of the evening. Next week we're back again about localization and earthquake rubble with the help of rats. And then the week after that we've got King's Day, so there won't be one, but then afterwards we'll be back weekly again, so check out our program online. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Hey, you're still here. So you like the video. If you want, subscribe and click the bell.